Hi, it's Andrew and I'm in the studio by myself today talking about a topic that I get asked about every single day. Behaviour change. Change is everywhere. I see it every single day in the athletes I coach, the teams I work with, the leaders I guide, and the audiences I speak to. Sometimes it's a small group from a workshop who come back months later with incredible stories of progress. Other times it's a client I've worked with for a decade whose life has completely transformed on an individual level. Sometimes it's their family members. Sometimes it's their whole broader ecosystem. And here's what I know for sure. Everybody, and I mean everybody, is capable of making a change. But here's the truth. When you do succeed in behaviour change, it's 100% your fault. And if you don't succeed, well, again, it's 100% your fault. And the difference is in the small stuff. I've now spent over 20 years coaching, studying, writing, podcasting, mediating and testing what works. I've worked with leaders and doctors and physiologists and psychologists and neuroscientists and thousands of clients. I've seen the results firsthand. If you're listening or watching this on YouTube, you're not the type of person to stay stuck. You want to grow, you want to evolve, and today I'm going to give you small steps on exactly how high performers create lasting change. But change doesn't work by accident. It happens when you, 1, understand the science behind behaviour change, and then 2, put that into practice. And today I'm going to share 2 of my favourite science-based frameworks that I use when it comes to behaviour change. The first one is Tiny Habits, made popular by Fogg. He's got a change map, which is around motivation, ability, and prompting or a trigger. There's a great book he's written as well called Tiny Habits. The second model, this is what I studied in coaching psychology. It's the readiness to change or the trans-theoretical model, which shows 5 stages of behaviour change. And it's a really good guide when you're coaching someone, that could even be yourself, to understand exactly where you sit right now, how to get to the next level, and how to also roll with the resistance. I'm also going to touch on the work of James Clear, the best-selling book. I think he's now sold over 12 million copies. Phenomenal. Atomic Habits popularizes the concept of habit stacking. That's the idea that the easiest way to build a new behavior is to anchor it or to build it onto something that you already do. Small actions laid together create big momentum. And I've got a goal. My goal is at the end of this episode, you'll have a clear, practical, tactical roadmap to start and stick with when it comes to habits and behaviour change that can genuinely transform your life. Let's dive in. Part 1, let's talk about why change feels so hard and why most transformation programs struggle. First of all, let's look at New Year's goals. The fireworks crackle, hiss and pop. We always sit or stand around iconic locations, and then that little voice, it starts in our head. This year I'm going to get fit, lose weight, stop smoking, learn French, spend more time with the kids. I say to a lot of my coaching clients, we may as well get a beer coaster, pull it out and just laminate it and say the same thing the following 10 years. You've saved so much time. This year I'm going to get fit, lose weight, stop smoking, learn French, spend more time with the kids. If you're listening to or watching this and going, I think he's talking to me, don't worry, you're not alone. 25% of all New Year's goals are broken in the first 2 weeks. 50% of resolutions are broken in the first month. And after 12 months of setting those fireworks, crackling, hissing and popping goals, get fit, lose weight, stop smoking, learn French, spend more time with the kids. After 12 months, less than 12% of people have actually stuck to their initial plan. Here's one of the main reasons why. When we set goals to impress other people, or we feel we have to set goals on that one day out of 365 days called New Year, they're not real. And if you're tired and fatigued and distracted, or your attention is being hijacked, you've got a very, very low chance of setting goals. We'll come back to a strategy in a moment. Let's now talk about large-scale transformation programs, and I live and breathe this. With the sporting teams I work with, it's effectively a behaviour change and transformation program. It takes about 3 years to really embed these skills, mental skills, leadership, belonging and culture in a high-performing team. And so many people are skeptical when they talk about transformation. Why? Well, research shows more than 70%, that's right, 70% of large-scale transformation programs fall short of their goals. That's a really nice way of saying they don't work. In our business now, Performance Intelligence, we're spending a lot of time partnering with clever, forward-thinking organisations who go, hey, we realise that over 70% of transformation programs don't work. Why? Well, it's because we traditionally focus on the process and the systems and the technology. And you need that for every behaviour change or large-scale transformation program. Better processes, proper systems and technology to enable you. AI is taking that to another whole different level. But what do we forget? Well, I learned this at KPMG. We forget the most unpredictable yet the most powerful part of any transformation. That's called you, that's called me, that's called us, humans. And we have behaviour. And we need to shift mindsets. And shifting a mindset is really complex and takes more than just a strategy. I'm going to get fit, lose weight, stop smoking. Or here's what we're going to do on the 18-month rollout. So many people, when you do these big corporate programs, they're skeptical. I know, I've been there. And you whisper to someone else or inside your voice, hey, pretend to engage because this too shall pass. The Hebrew proverb, and some clown down the track will come up with another transformation program and just pretend to engage in that, and Hebrew proverb, this too shall pass. So many of us simply don't feel equipped to handle change emotionally, mentally, physically, any type of alley. And the research shows more than half of employees say adaptability isn't a strength for them. Is it not a strength for them because they haven't trained it? Is it not a strength for them because they're so busy, they're tired, they're energy depleted, and they're distracted that they've got no capacity for anything else? So here's the real thing about transformation. It depends on you. It depends on your resilience. It depends on your flexibility, and it depends on learning new habits. It also depends on leaders understanding this, number one, and two, setting up a framework to model this, put it into practice and reward. I want to give you 2 strategies to help you do this, and that's part 2. We're going to look at science-based behaviour change frameworks. The first one I want to look at is BJ Fogg's change map. This behaviour model, developed by Stanford researcher BJ Fogg, and it's articulated beautifully in his book Tiny Habits. It outlines a simple equation. Now, this is in the show notes, but if you're listening to this and you can either write down with pen and paper or you can write down on a device, I'd love you to do that. That's going to help your learning. So behaviour change equals map. Fogg calls this his behaviour map, and that is motivation, ability, and the prompt. In other words, for any change to happen, you need 3 ingredients to show up at the same time. You need motivation. That's the desire to do the thing or make the change, whether it's improving your health, switching off technology, stepping up into high-pressure moments, or not being an arsehole when you go home and get cranky when you've gone from work to home with your kids or partner. And as a coach, this is where I try to anchor this to an emotional conduit. Example, if you're wanting to be a better parent or a better partner, link that to the emotional conduit. Really powerful one. I often say to corporates, middle-aged men who want to lose weight, I'll go, why do you want to lose weight, mate? And I go, so I fit better in my suit, so I have more confidence and more energy. And I go, hey, look, do you have kids? Yep. How many? 2. Do you love them? Most of the time. Okay, I get that. I want to give you some research from University of Western Sydney. Fact, fit, healthy parents have fit, healthy kids. Fact, unfit, unhealthy parents have a much more likelihood of unfit, unhealthy, overweight kids. And then I'll pause. I'll look at him in the eyes or look at her in the eyes and say, how does that make you feel? The amount of times I've done this and I've had tears, people saying, gosh, Maisie, it was all external, extrinsic, and I was thinking about how I'm going to look or how I'm going to show up. But gosh, when I think of my kids and I'm in really poor shape at the moment, and if they're going to be like this because of my modelling, that's an emotional conduit that you put to that map. So what's your motivation, what's your ability, and what's your prompter, or what's that trigger? Bang. I've seen people who've stopped change, danced around, stuffed about on-off programs straight away, lock in and never look backwards. So that ability is a meaning or a task that is achievable. And here's something that I did, when I was in my 20s for sure. I used to make it way too complicated, overwhelming, time-consuming. And looking back, a lot of people checked out. What I've realised, 25 years of coaching, sometimes the best thing I can do is make it really freaking simple. Here's the one habit you need to do now, and that can cascade a whole bunch of habits. We call that keystone habits. I'm actually going to do another solo episode coming up where I talk about the framework we use to change large groups, which is a keystone habits framework. As a coach, I use this map, the behaviour change map, when I want to set people up for success. I also talk to them about their potential barriers or roadblocks. I actually had someone last year go, "Oh, look, Andrew, this feels a bit negative. You're asking me, where do you think I may unravel or what is going to get in the way?" I go, "Look, it's not negative. It's real. We are human beings and we have schema and thoughts and previous habits and relationships, and when we're tired we say dumb shit and eat bad stuff and drink too much, and you know where the story goes." So identifying potential barriers or roadblocks is a really smart way, and then if/when that comes up, you can go, I expected this might be a roadblock, now I know how to adapt around that. Now, the P or the prompt, this in a lot of the other research, and I often use this with my athletes, is a trigger that reminds you to act or reminds you to try the new behaviour. I'll give you an example. It could be your morning routine. It could be after you finish a meeting. It can even be brushing your teeth. It's something you already do that becomes the cue for your new habit. An example that I use is we teach micro doses of mindfulness, because for a lot of people to sit down and do the traditional meditation type of mindfulness, they're nowhere near ready, especially if they've just run from one meeting to the next on their mobile the whole time for decades. And then I say, "Hey, go sit down for 10 minutes. They look at you and they start to go stir crazy. But you can stack or microdose mindfulness. Now, the research tells us 6 minutes is the minimum effective dose. 20 to 25 minutes is where the real magic happens. I picked 10 because it's an easy number, sort of halfway in between, more towards the lower side. So our goal is to have 10 minutes of mindfulness per day. 2 minutes brushing your teeth, 5 minutes when you're commuting to work, one conversation for 2 minutes where you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, use it that way, and 1 minute where you're slowly eating food. And the trigger for this, or the prompt, becomes when you're brushing your teeth of a morning, you can set the daily intention and go, "Today I want to show up and be present, to have energy, to be an engaging leader." And then, right, this is now my 2 minutes of microdosing mindfulness. So that's a really nice stack. And a habit stack is where you're doing 2 habits together on top of each other. In fact, that's 3, brushing your teeth. Dentists say do it for 2 minutes a day. Just set that daily intention, so to be present when you start brushing your teeth. And then you can set the intention and use that as 2 minutes of mindfulness. Cannot tell you how many people have come up to me in our corporate programs or our corporate clients or some of the some of the world's best athletes I work with, and they go, "Maisie, I brush my teeth like I've been told and like I've done every day for years." When I build that habit stacking into it, I get it, because it's stacking on a habit that I already do. So many of you will have heard about habit stacking from James Clear in his best-selling book, Wiz. I think he's now sold 12.5 or 13 million copies. It's been an absolute belter. And James Clear based a lot of his research off BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits concept. He took it a step further and he called it habit stacking. And it is one of the most effective and simple ways to build a new habit. And part of the science around this is called the basal ganglia, part in your brain that helps us drive new habits and behaviors. And that's like a spider web. So we're laying new webs, and in many cases we're also getting rid of the webs that no longer serve us or that no longer help us. The concept of habit stacking taps into this. So instead of forcing yourself into an entirely new routine, which takes energy, you simply stack your new habit onto an existing one. So another example can be of a morning when you walk into the kitchen, and rather than having coffee, and we do this with our morning wake up as well, we get our clients to push caffeine back 60 to 90 minutes. Now, for a lot of people, it's the habit of drinking coffee. So if they replace that with water, get outside, get some sunshine, move a little bit, have the coffee 60 or 90 minutes into the day, you then get the kick that it was designed for. You're using this basal ganglia or this habit stacking notion. So you're still drinking something, water instead of coffee, and you anchor the new behavior to something automatic, and suddenly change feels much more simple, achievable, even natural. This is about reducing the friction. This is about momentum and building momentum. We've only got a finite amount of energy. So realistic, small changes anchored to your life can be designed in a way that builds success throughout the day. It's not overwhelming, and you get momentum on top of each other. That's the notion of taking BJ Fogg's map about motivation, your ability, and the prompt or the trigger, and then building that into what James Clear has called habit stacking. They work really well together. The second strategy I want to talk about is what we call stages of readiness, because some days you're just not ready to take bold action. Other days, charge! You can be taking on so much new change based on energy and mindset. This model was the go-to model that we studied in coaching psychology at Sydney University. And I went to university to understand behaviour change because it was really complex. After 2.5 years doing a master's, I came out going, behaviour change is more freaking complex than I ever thought. But that's why today I've tried to break this down. So that model, the MAP model, the behaviour map, is really good for individual habit and behaviour change. When you're looking at a bigger system or where you are, these stages of readiness can really help. Now, this coaching psychology model was designed by two psychologists called Proetschka and also Carlo Di Clemente. I think it was James Proetschka. And the reality they saw is change doesn't happen in one giant leap. It's a process. And knowing where you sit on the change curve can make a huge difference between lasting success or just spinning your wheels. Now, the stages of change, or the trans-theoretical model, outlines 5 different stages of change. They are: number 1, pre-contemplation; 2, contemplation; 3, preparation; 4 is action; and 5 is maintenance, leading into new behaviour. You can see why behaviour change is so complex, but bear with me, I'll go through each of the 5. There's a model that we put up on the show notes for this, and if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll come up on the screen right now. Pre-contemplation, sometimes people don't even know what they need to know. I think of this model when I'm delivering a keynote for a large audience or when we're running a large-scale performance wellbeing program. Let's say there's 500 people in the room when I'm doing a road show on an organisation like I recently did for a large building company. So there'll be 500 people in a room for some of these events. In fact, the biggest one was 1,500 or 1,600 in Melbourne. So when you've got a large bunch of people in the room, some of them are in pre-contemplation. They don't even know what they need to know. So if you're talking about behaviour change and locking into your diary and wake up and salute, they think you're an idiot. So when someone's in pre-contemplation, you just got to give them a bit of information, a bit of comfort, a bit of support to try and help them move to that second stage, contemplation, where you're just thinking about it. So number 1, pre-contemplation, people don't even know what they need to know. As an educator, as a coach, as a change agent, you're trying to give people some information to move them along the process. Contemplation, Dr. Tony Grant at Sydney University used to call this the seesaw of ambivalence, or stacking that seesaw of contemplation. Now, when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, group coaching, or especially some of our executive programs, I'll get people to do a seesaw with a little apex, and we'll put all the positives. Use a really clear example, exercise. What are the benefits, Wizard, of doing exercise? Why should we exercise, mate? Exercise helps us...
Exercise helps. It gives us more energy, helps you lose weight, get fitter, makes you just feel better, honestly.
Brain function.
Yeah, you think... I was going to say think smarter.
So if we knew there were the reasons to exercise, why do people not exercise? What are some of the barriers?
Some people, not pointing fingers at myself, but some of us are just really lazy. Some people don't enjoy traditional exercise, like going to the gym. Some people just find it not very fun.
Some people have had a bad experience or don't have a good connection with exercise from school or when they were young. And on the seesaw, on the reasons why people don't exercise, it's often the prefix to TOO. So Wiz, you meant could be too lazy, too busy, I'm too tired, too much travel, or we can use the weather. It's too hot, too cold, too hilly, too flat. Now, to be provocative in a coaching session or in a keynote, and with you, our podcast audience, I'm going to be a bit provocative. I think we come up with too many bullshit excuses on why we stack the seesaw to not even exercise. Change just takes 21 days. Some of the American pop psychology motivation speakers tell us. Well, when you use the BJ Fogg model and the behaviour change map, if you get a tiny habit, it can happen straight away. But on large scale change, 21 days, my backside. Some people can be on this relapse roundabout, meaning they change behaviour, go back to where they were for 21 years, let alone 21 days. So what this model does, it allows me as a coach or you as an individual to think, where am I? Where are you at? If you're in pre-contemplation, just gather some info, get ready. Contemplation, you need to stack the seesaw and give yourself more positive reasons to move forward. Now, we haven't even changed yet. That's called stage 4, action. Stage 3 is preparation. This is the question that I've had with so many people. It's late January or early February. They rush straight from contemplation to action and they don't do preparation. Here's what it looks like. So I want to get fit. I go join a gym. I'll say, do you like gyms? No, hate them. Well, why did you go? Because to get fit, I got to go to the gym. No, let's tease that out a little bit in the preparation. What's going to be easy for you to get to work or drop off the kids or include in your lifestyle? What did you like doing as a kid? Well, I actually really like swimming. I love getting out in nature. Well, the biophilia, the Latin word for the feel-good effect of nature. We know there's beautiful benefits of swimming in the ocean. So why don't you put in your diary to go and swim so you have a conversation with someone in preparation, phase 3. We haven't even started yet. Let's go back. So number 1, stage 1 was pre-contemplation, don't know what you need to know. Stage 2 is contemplation, stacking the seesaw. Stage 3 is preparation, looking at how you set yourself up for success. Stage 4, then you get into action. And when you stack the seesaw and do the proper prep, when you get into action, and this does link in with BJ Fogg's more simple model, a couple of tiny habits will build momentum. Then for maintenance or new behavior, that's 3 to 6 months. So when we run large-scale programs, when I talk to people one-on-one, I give them the research. Do you realize the average person will relapse, which means you'll go back to your old behavior 8 to 10 times? And most people look at you and go, well, God, that's depressing. No, it's real. We have shown with our corporate programs, we'll at least halve that. So we'll get our relapse down to about 3 or 4 with a structured large-scale program. But when you build this into the narrative, when people do relapse, they don't feel like a failure. They don't feel like a loser. They go, oh, I've relapsed. That's a perfectly normal, healthy part of the behavior change program. Now I'll just get back onto that model. Do I need to go into contemplation, or do I do more preparation or dive back into action? Have a look at the model. Make sure you go to the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, and really think about the fluidity of this, because you don't just move from one stage to the next to the next. It actually moves around. This model has been a game changer for me in my own behavior, and it's been a game changer to help other people change their behaviors. We're up to part 3. Part number 1 was we looked at why change and transformation is so hard and normally doesn't work. Part 2, 2 different types of models or frameworks for change. Now, part 3, this is where the rubber hits the road, or the pen hits the paper, or your finger hits the keyboard. I need you to write it down. Don't just think about it, do it. What you write down or what you document, what you can see in front of you, you're way more likely to achieve. There's some compelling research backing this up. We'll put a study wizard in the show notes that shows we are 42% more likely to achieve our goals and make change just by writing them down. That's it. I want you to write down one change you'd like to achieve in your life. Even if it's a tiny habit, it may be drinking water first thing of the morning and pushing the coffee back. That'll have a cascade of other benefits as well. I just want you to write it down. You might want more energy, not to hit Friday afternoon and just be running on vaporware. Write it down. It's also really difficult to achieve those goals if you don't keep yourself accountable. So it could be learning how to switch off, or to stop overthinking, or to relax, or maybe you want to show up sharper for those big performance moments at work. Whatever it is, write it down. Got it? If you haven't written down, don't go to the next stage, part 4. Pause now and write it down. Part 4 is the common pitfalls and how to overcome them. I've looked at 3 of the biggest traps that trip us up when we go through behavior change programs. Trap number 1 is trying to change everything at once. This also links to trying to be everything to everyone. We get excited, we feel motivated, and suddenly we're overhauling our whole life. This is where BJ Fogg's model really helps. When you pile on 10 new habits, you're not sure of your motivation, your ability drops because you feel overwhelmed, and you can't remember the prompt or the trigger. So it's really clear to understand why that doesn't happen. What's a better approach? Just laser focus on one meaningful habit at a time. Love the song Paul Kelly, the singer-songwriter, not the AFL player, from little things, big things grow. Master that, make it automatic, then layer in the next. That's how high performers build sustainable habits. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. Be patient. Here's mistake or trap number 2, expecting perfection. OMG, the amount of times in a workshop or a coaching session where someone is trying to be perfect. It doesn't bloody exist. Look, there's a fine line between perfectionism and healthy competition, but it's an important fine line. Healthy competition, it's okay if I make mistakes. Healthy competition, I can show people my vulnerability and they're not going to judge me. Healthy competition, I'm not going to master everything straight away, or I may not master it. I'm just going to be a better version myself. Perfectionism creates so much stress. Of course you're going to make mistakes. Of course nothing is done with absolute flawless execution or no slip-ups. And of course you can't be fully committed 100% every single day of the week. The reality, life happens. You're going to miss a workout. You could run late sometimes through no problem or no cause of your own. You can have days where your energy levels feel really low. If you're chasing perfection, I'll tell you one thing, you're not going to hit it and you're going to feel tired and drained and fatigued. So stop it. Be nice to yourself. A better approach, embrace progress over perfection. Small, messy imperfection beats short bursts of so-called perfectionism. Those people that create lasting, long-term, sustainable change, they're the ones that show up. They're the ones that keep going, and they're the ones that are nice to themselves. Get that balance between healthy competition and perfectionism. Now, mistake number 3 or trap number 3 is going it alone. No man, no woman is an island. You need a support system. If you try and change solo, it's like going up a mountain with no map. You might hit it blindly and be lucky, but what happens if the wind changes, the rain rolls in and you get lost, you don't know where to go? Get yourself accountable. That's how so many of our programs work at Performance Intelligence. We understand you need accountability to help you change. This could be a friend, your partner, a mentor, someone at work, someone who reminds you of what you're trying to do and calls you out when you drift off that plan. Also, you've got to celebrate the small wins. We know that research shows sharing our goals dramatically influences chances of achieving them, but it's also about being strategic with the people you share them with. People that you have psychological safety or trust will dramatically increase the likelihood of you keeping on those goals because you have a trusted source coming back and keeping you accountable. No one creates meaningful change alone, and you don't have to either. A big part in behaviour change is where you are on that stages of change model. The right message at the right time, delivered in the right way for you in the right stage of change can literally turn things upside down. I used to think you have to do deep embedded programs to dramatically change people's lives. Well, that can help, and it definitely increases the likelihood on large scale corporate transformations or the work that I do in sport. But the right message at the right time for the right person delivered in the right way can totally change. I was doing a roadshow for Stockland about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and in the Brisbane episode of that, 2 people came up to me, Peta and Nick, and they were effusive. They were just so excited about the changes they'd made on a keynote I had done about 24 months earlier. So Shannon picked up with Peta to talk about the messages she heard, the right message, the right time delivered in the right way, and she had fantastic change. And see if you can listen to those models, both that model from BJ Fogg, the change map, and also think about the stages of the change model.
Peta, can you take us back to 2 years ago? I really want to paint the picture for the audience here. Where were you 2 years ago before you met Andrew? Paint the scene a little bit for us.
I came into a conference with my broader team, and I'd done this Live Life score prior to going into the conference. So I had a little bit of an understanding of what it might be about, but I certainly, at the time, it was a very busy period work-wise. So I had multiple corporate transactions going on, and I was certainly very time poor. And then having this very energetic guy talk to us about, why we needed to take time out for ourselves and think about having a sauna just seemed like a complete luxury to me. So initially I found Andrew a bit confronting. Like, I've got 2 young kids, they're 5 and 7. I feel like I'm already not dedicating enough time and spending enough time with them. And I've got this big job where I'm working extended hours, particularly at that point in time. So I was quite fatigued and quite low energy. And then, I've sort of got this high energy person telling me that I need to change my behaviors. So it was quite confronting.
Okay, so you're sitting in the room, you're with 40 to 50 of your colleagues, unsure of, who this energetic person is. I believe Andrew came in as the keynote speaker to talk about high performance, the building blocks that underpin high performance, the importance of recovery plans and those healthy habits to ignite and sustain change in you. What was it in his message that landed for you that day?
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he basically said, your life is about the habit. It's about your everyday habits. And if you're not giving permission for yourself to adopt better habits, then think about what your kids are seeing in terms of how they're perceiving you and your lack of time, lack of availability, and lack of presence. And that is really what resonated for me. So that intrinsic motivation is actually my kids are seeing me feeling, not having the time. When I do have the time, not having the energy. And that just wasn't, I was failing. Like I felt like I was failing. So I think that message about, putting your own oxygen mask on first, whilst it sounds like a luxury to take out time for strategic recovery, that really, I think, was the motivation for me to think, okay, I need to actually, yes, prioritize my kids first, but also make time, and the word ruthless prioritization, question, the time that I'm spending on other things that, maybe I don't need to be, and not actually thinking about. I'm sort of going through the motions and taking some of that time back to be more conscious in the choices that I'm making about how I spend my time. And that was really what resonated with me at that moment.
So that was 2 years ago. Your company brought Andrew back recently, and Andrew told me you and your colleague Nick went up to him eager to tell him about the changes you'd make. Can you bring me back to that moment? What did you tell Andrew in that moment?
So we had to get a taxi from the sitting to the event space, and we happened to be in a taxi with Andrew, and we're talking about the earlier event, and it was basically, telling him exactly what I'm telling you. I sort of said to him, look, I sort of thought you didn't really understand my life, and you didn't really quite understand the time constraints that I had, and you were telling me I should do all of these things. I was pretty honest with him about my initial reaction, but I had made some big changes. I was still, getting up at 5:30 every morning. I've been able to be really consistent with my exercise, probably the best that I have throughout my life. I was very keen to share that with him. So, and I'm doing regular saunas, which I didn't think I'd be doing, but certainly, that was, instead of having an extra couple of glasses of wine or wine at all. So it was a high energy cab ride for Andrew, and I was excited to share with him some of the things that I would put into action.
Yeah, and I believe Nick isn't with us today, but he lost, I think it was 10 kgs. Do you know much about his transformation?
Look, I don't know about exactly that. I myself lost quite a bit of weight. So I was definitely the heaviest I'd ever been. Like I said, I had really poor energy, and I'd lost at least 10 kilos myself over that period of time. And I've been able to, more or less keep it off. So that's been definitely an added benefit.
The key takeaways for me was that ruthless prioritization. You remained consistent over the past 2 years. And would you say it was really tapping into that intrinsic motivation that really was like the pivotal point from meeting Andrew? It was your children that really has kept you going and kept you ruthlessly prioritizing and consistent?
I think that's right. I think having a big job and having a young family, being conscious of the habits and being conscious of the decisions you make is really being a key takeaway. And that's not just at home, that's at work. So making time for strategic recovery, in that it can be downtime or it's managing those performance moments, is another key takeaway that's been really something that's helped me a lot in my work. Just having that understanding of scheduling time throughout the day to be able to prepare for those performance moments has been another really kind of key change in how I think about my week. And I think Andrew talks about the better week, but really trying to get into flow and be able to show up, not just show up at work, and being able to obviously show up at home, which has absolutely, to your point, been key motivator for me.
Let's get to part 5. This is the call to action. I'm going to wrap up with clear steps for you. Step number 1, I'd really like you to go to the show notes of this episode and download that behaviour map and the stages of readiness template. That'll just give you a visual for those 2 science-based simple if you use them in the right way, behaviour change frameworks. So when you understand those, it makes it much easier to put into practice. And that's step 2, print it out, stick it somewhere visible, on the fridge, on your desk, on a mirror, so you can remind yourself about those 2 behaviour change frameworks. And at the top of the behaviour map, this is stage 3, I want you to use that worksheet to write down one small change you're ready to commit to now. Now, keep it specific, keep it real. What's your motivation? What's your ability to put this into practice? And what's your prompt or your trigger? There you go, behaviour change. It is really complex. Even putting this together, I said to Shannon, gosh, we could go down so many different paths. It's why we focused on the 2 behaviour change frameworks that I use on a daily basis. BJ Fogg's really simple yet elegant behaviour map, and then looking at the stages of readiness and where you or where other people you are. Hey, we love your feedback. This is the type of format that we're thinking about doing more often based on your feedback. Do you want more of these? We've been asked more for me to get on the mic, look down the camera, and just go deep on a framework. And what would you like to hear more of? What's something around psychology, neuroscience, well-being, performance, leadership that you'd like me to do a similar process on? In wrapping up, change can be really complicated, but if you break it down, little steps at a time, use science, change can absolutely be your friend.